If you like the video, then please consider supporting Slopes Game Room on Patreon. Are you ready to feel old? You remember that game World of Goo, yeah? Well, on the 13th of October this very year, it's a whole 10 years old. Unless, of course, you're obviously watching this in the future, then, well, it's obviously a little bit older than that, isn't it? Regardless, guys, it's safe to say that this awesome little indie title is now an awesome little retro indie title. And no, that's not the only reason that I've decided to make a video on it. The real reason I decided to talk about this is that after adding it to my eventual 100 games of all time video, bring on the 100 mark for that one, I discovered a brilliant little underdog story that just had to be told. World of Goo is one of those games that everybody loves because it's made for systems that everybody had. But unlike the mental amounts of shovelware found upon systems like these, it actually found a way to use the unique controls better than most. It's a perfect example of using limitations to the extreme and creating something excellently unique in the process. And on top of this awesome control scheme is a game that's so incredibly easy to understand and so impressively addictive, surrounded by an excellent visual style, wonderfully weird story and enchanting soundtrack that if you're anything like me, then nostalgia will just be too much and you'll have no choice but to scrub the battery acid off those Wii remotes and boot up the game once again. So, join me as we look at probably the most modern complete history that I've ever done, with World of Goo. We'll be looking at the game's almost forgotten pilot, its debt-riddled origins, its heavily pirated release, and of course, the game itself. Welcome to Slopes Game Room. A lot of people love World of Goo. During its release, it got endless amounts of love by everyone that played it. Very few people had anything bad to say about this incredible game, and in my opinion, the only people to moan about it were reviewers trying to find anything negative at all so that their reviews seemed a little bit more balanced. Like, I don't know, there isn't a level editor. To be fair, I actually would have loved a level editor in this game, and thankfully, nerdy fans have actually given us one. But when you look at what you got, for me, it's the perfect little package with a perfect little price point that actually was only ever purchased legitimately 1 in every 5 times it was played. But more on that in a minute, because I think we're in fact getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, let's go back to the beginning. Let me introduce you to one Carl Gabler. When at school in the early 2000s, he and a few friends decided to make the experimental gameplay project. A cute little idea where Carl and a few friends would pick a theme every month and create games based around it. Seems simple, right? Well, the only catch is to create the game within only 7 days. And on top of that, you gotta make sure to not get overly attached to it. Some of these games are obviously rather tosh, some were rather fun, and others, well, actually, this one seems pretty good. Anyway, there's a link below if you want to go check out the rest of what's on offer here. Moving on a little, after school in 2006, hidden deep within a sea of hipsters at a local coffee shop, either Coffee to the People or Pete's and the Grand in San Francisco if you want to be specific, Carl Gabler was doing what any hipster would be doing in this environment. Rinsing the shop's Wi-Fi and drinking overpriced squeezed caffeinated beans with his new buddy, Ron Carmel. The two had known each other for a little while by this point and actually first met at a little known company called EA. Ron was losing his marbles doing mindless programming work over at Pogo.com, a crappy online flash site full of bejeweled rip-offs, obviously owned by EA, and Carl had a slightly more entertaining role creating game prototypes. which, to be fair, was exactly what he was doing over here. Regardless, the duo wanted more, and in an interview with the incredible Edge magazine, Kyle jokes that the two constantly found themselves looking up at the sky like a Disney princess with wide open wet eyes, knowing that the grass surely had to be greener outside of the prison-like walls that had been built up around them by the Loot Crate box heavy Electronic Arts. So, even though the two didn't really know each other too well, they decided to make a video game of their own. And with a new kick in his step and a tiny amount of money saved, and I'm talking a seriously small amount of money, like $10,000, as well as roughly $30,000 in student debt, Ron asked his manager at EA for a 3-month leave of absence to work on the new indie project, and the boss said no. In retaliation to this, Ron decided to do what all clever people would do in this situation and put all of his black blobby eggs into one basket and hand in his notice. It was at this point EA turned it all around, offering that 3-month leave that Ron had originally asked for, but he had heard enough by this point. He hated that he had to literally threaten his job before the bigwigs opened up their ear holes and decided to leave anyway. It was with that the video game developer's 2D boy was born. And look, here's a picture of main guy Ron sending in the company registration form. Actually, there was one very big problem. What sort of game should they make? There was apparently some sort of idea of a tree that you need to grow that eats people, but that's as far as that idea went. There was no doubt a few more ideas as well that got slapped about, but it was when a friend of theirs sent them a video of an upcoming game from a European publisher that completely ripped off that Tower of Goo game made years back on the experimental gameplay project that the two finally got the kick up the arse needed to turn that old prototype into a fully fledged game. So that tiny team decided to use these coffee shops as the base of operations to create the game in an attempt to stretch that small amount of money the company had behind them as far as it would go. There was no computers or dev kit costs involved when making this game, but instead the money went into such things as, 2 burritos costing $12. The idea was to make the game on a shoestring of money, and that's exactly what they did. And although the original concept was to expand the Tower of Goo game with the first level forcing you to get 10 meters high and the second level pushing up to 20 meters and so on, the duo quickly realized, as good as that idea was, it was completely throwaway. Tower of Goo needed a redesign, and a redesign was what it got. They needed to make each level feel unique, and they needed to add a hell of a lot of variety. Did they manage it? Well, I think it's about time that I finally review this bad boy. Just like the greatest puzzlers on the market that you may be more familiar with, like Pipe Mania and, I suppose Pac-Man to an extent, the idea in World of Goo is incredibly simple. Get your goo to the pipe using as few goos as possible so that you have plenty left when it works out your score at the end of the level. This may seem simple, but as you'll soon discover, it's anything but. As levels progress, you get given types of goo balls that do completely different things, and there are plenty of obstacles that are likely to completely destroy your structure. If your structure gets hits and you lose a few goos, there's no other option than to try again. Well, technically you could keep going, but surely nobody does that, right? Because in a game like World of Goo, you will be restarting a hell of a lot. The game takes about 8 to 10 hours to complete depending on your skill level, and everybody that plays it loves it. In fact, according to Metacritic, which is something I never normally do, the game actually ranks as the 4th best game on the entire Wii system. Literally the whole Wii library, behind Twilight Princess and Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. If you have never played this little indie title, or if you're like me and it's been a while, be sure to go and pick it up once again. It's a damn fun time that shouldn't be overlooked. And although at first glance it may seem like a typical physics-based puzzle game with a unique twist, when you know the story behind it, the whole atmosphere and story of the game takes you down a different path as you start small, practically with nothing, building up the ladder and eventually getting sucked away just like those developers who made this game almost did. The Tim Burton-esque art style, the Danny Elfman score, which is available for free, might I add, direct from Carl's website, that is also chock-a-block full of tidbits on where the inspiration of most pieces of music for the game came from, really do add so much to this new experience. Hey, maybe I'm overthinking it all, and perhaps it's just another puzzle game. When the game eventually hit digital shelves, it did well. I mean, really well. And like I said, it's actually recently been chucked up on the Switch too, which is probably the very best version to get, as it uses both the classic Wii-like controls and the classic touchscreen controls that tablet and mobile gamers are used to. But when it was originally released, the team decided, probably due to their past at EA, to not worry about the copy protection in the slightest. Why bother trying to stop people cracking this tiny little game when literally every single game, if good enough, will eventually be cracked and chucked up on torrent sites all over the internet? Which, like I said, this game did. It was estimated that 1 in 5 gamers who played through this awesome little title did so legitimately, which was easy to do as the game was completely void of any DRM. Surprisingly, it was actually the WiiWare version that was spotted by the devs before the PC version. But hey, they didn't seem to mind. A lot of that early buzz came from the 14th annual Independent Game Festival, which was great because the duo had diminished the vast majority of their funds, and the final year of bug testing had taken its toll on the team more than you could imagine. But when people played it, they fell in love with it. Ron remembers it taking a whole 6 months of doing nothing to recover from this crazy mess that was creating the game, and although originally a sequel was never on the cards, back in 2010 Kyle did document in a blog post that a second World of Goo game is a possibility, and something we would enjoy working on. Hang on a minute, isn't it the game's 10-year anniversary next month? Interesting. Hey there guys, thanks for checking out my rather small and obscure complete history video. I'm working on a massive new Kick Scammer video which is probably going to be over an hour long, all based on a certain handheld that came out recently. I will not say any more, as well as a few other complete histories that I'm working on too. So anyway, I hope you like the video. So this is the part of the video where I give a big special shout out to all of my patrons, but an extra special shout out goes to that retro video gamer, Ryan Burford, Gary Pinkett, Andrew Dalton, Aaron McNamara, Tomek Grabowski, Christopher Turnbull, Brent Craft, Ben Jackson, Ian A. Chapman, Phil Lowlins, Retro to Next Gen, Quang DX, Tim Lund, Genovi, Video Game Basement, Hananaz, Pixel.Limited, aka Samuel Victor, Red the Beard, John Fuller, Conrad Constantine, Pretendo 64, Mike Falling, Creamy Elephant, James Loveridge, Casey Garner, Blitz, Hedgie, Ben Hall, Savage Garden Show, Brian Rawson, Gemma at Mr. T-Shirts, Jeremy Rodriguez, Nick Pollard, Bram Perez, Garrett Leger, Marcus King Emo Cut Tyndall, June, Rob Jenkins, The Geeky Dad, Richard Carter, aka Fantastic Dizzy, Todd Paul Float G, and Petty Mew. If you want to get your name shouted out, get your name shown, come and see what I'm working on, all of the other awesome perks that all of these Patreons seem to be getting all the time, then please click the links that you see on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you prefer. But for now, this is DJ Slope signing out, and
see you all next time.